Let's talk numbers. So I want to talk to you about the big three and people who have found success against the big three. And I want to hear your reaction. So there's statistics brought to from a social media page that follows tennis exclusively that asks the question, who has the most wins against the big three? Who do you think are the players who have found the most success anytime they played the big three? And this isn't percentage of wins. This is how many times they won a match against the big three.
Off the top of my head, Dominic Thiem for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had a really good record against Federer.
Mm-hmm.
Murray would be another one that would be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about Del Potro, but he did beat Nadal and Federer back to back at the U.S. Open to win it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other one is the Stanimal. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah.
For a while, he had a winning record on Djokovic.
Mm-hmm.
So off the top of my head, those are the two. But the most for sure would be Stanimal and Dominic Thiem.
Okay. On a traditional podcast episode, I'd read you the entire list, and we'd work our way from lowest number to highest number. I'm just going to bring up some numbers for some highlight players I think are interesting to see. So we'll start with one that is really going to speak to just being consistently a high-level player on the tour for a long time during the Big Three era. In last place, we have David Ferrer with 11 wins against the Big Three. Obviously, we know he just went to quarterfinals of everything he played in,
right?
And he had a lot of longevity. But the next one is a guy who didn't really flourish or grow until he was almost 30 years old, and that's Stan Wawrinka with 12 wins against the Big Three.
Right.
And this is a guy who was like 0-13 versus Federer until he was 28, 29 years old.
Right.
What are your thoughts on Stan Wawrinka's run against the Big Three?
Yes, his game was so penetrating, and his backhand is just opens up the court. But Federer knew how to neutralize that backhand for sure.
Yeah.
And obviously there was a big brother, little brother type thing
the
going
shadow
on.
thing going on.
Yeah, so but he proved it against Djokovic for sure.
Yeah, and winning a French Open, that's huge.
Right.
Next one, another guy who was just a high-performing player on the tour for a very long time, with 13 wins against the Big Three, Tomas Berdych.
Okay.
You pretty fair. That. Yeah, pretty fair. This is a guy who probably only never won any slams because of the Big Three.
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense there. But let's get to the final four. You did a pretty good job with your immediate thoughts on these. In fourth place, we have a guy who... I have a lot to say about this one, but I want to hear your thoughts first. 16 wins against the Big Three, Dominic Thiem.
Again, similar thing, penetrating. He just ropes a backhand down the line. He was super aggressive at his prime. He sets up the point beautifully. His forehand had a lot of... It exited the court. It wasn't a heavy top like Nadal's, but it exited the court.
Yeah.
So that his forehand was huge.
Yeah. I think that he's the only player on this list that for me was he was beating all of the Big Three, not with volume and quantity of matches played against them.
Right.
But he doesn't have as many matches against these guys as anyone else we've listed.
Yes.
And he still has more wins than everyone we've listed so far.
Yeah, that's insane.
And he beat Nadal on clay. He had a full winning record legitimately against Federer.
Right.
And he took out Djokovic when he needed to.
Right.
This is a guy that, to me, he was the actual future of tennis at one point. You know, he might be the greatest disappointment or letdown ever in tennis, as far as projected potential and the reality. So Dominic Thiem with 16 is tied with Tsonga.
Wow. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Very surprising for me.
Yes.
I didn't see Tsonga win that many matches against the Big Three, but he was another one of those consistently in the top 10 rankings the majority of his career for probably a decade.
Right.
So in that case, it is understandable, but I just don't remember the matches.
No.
I can't remember where he was beating them at, but...
It must have been early on in their careers, honestly. before Djokovic took off.
Yeah. And the next one, Juan Martín del Potro, with 17 wins. One more than the last two guys. But this is a guy that you listed him off almost immediately.
Right.
Yeah, this is a guy who outstroked, outplayed the big three for a stint of his career pre-injuries. He might be the actual biggest what if in tennis history.
Yeah.
As far as he still is spoken of as possibly one of the greatest forehands to ever be on the tour. He was very tall and lanky. He might have pioneered the big man, little man era that we're in now, which is 6'5" plus guys that cover the court, as well as the smaller 6'1", 6 foot guys, and has incredibly consistent strokes. This is a great player. What are your thoughts on Delpo?
Yeah, he had a penetrating forehand. The reason why he had a good record on Nadal is because to create topspin, you need to swing up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And Del Potro hit so flat that he would penetrate through his forehand with that extreme Western grip.
Yeah.
So he just had his number.
Yeah. Yeah. Del Potro was special. And the last one, the most obvious one, this is the guy who was originally in the Big Four.
Right.
Andy Murray.
Yes.
With 29 wins against the Big Three. Surprised by that?
No. That's why he was in the Big Four.
Yeah.
Complete game.
Mm-hmm.
The master of the lob.
Mm-hmm.
Backhand consistent. Really good returner. He'd make you play an extra point. Mm-hmm. So he was able to hang there with them for sure.
Yeah. Last question. What do you think is the reason Andy Murray kind of got left behind at one point? This is probably around 2011, 2010, where he started to get separated from the rest of the big three.
I think that he lacked a weapon. Federer, they say he has 15 different forehands. Nadal's forehand was insane.
Yeah.
Djokovic's movement, his redirection, and Murray just didn't do anything better than Djokovic in the redirection part, movement part.
Yeah.
So I think he needed a bigger weapon, something that would distinct him from them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I had for you. Just to spout them out there, the last few guys I didn't mention who have success versus the big three are Andy Roddick, and Leighton Hewitt.
Okay, I could have seen Leighton Hewitt.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, that's pretty much everything I got. You have anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah.